On today's vlog, I'm going to be focusing on replacing my voltage regulator on my M5. I'm going to shuffle the cars around a little bit so that I can start work on removing some parts from my car so I can get access to the alternator and replace the voltage regulator. Along the way, I did come across some problems, but I was able to overcome it. I got quite a bit of things I gotta do on today's vlog. On the last episode, I spoke about how I'm gonna be focusing on my M5, and the first critical item that I have on my list is changing the voltage regulator. This problem is causing a warning light on my iDrive, and it's causing a charge malfunction. I've been doing some research for quite a while to figure out which part in my M5 that I need to replace to remedy the situation, and I finally found it. And this is the voltage regulator. It's actually a small piece, but just to get to it is going to be a pretty big job because I got to remove quite a bit of things underneath my car to access the alternator, and then from there it's a pretty tight space. So it's going to be a challenge today, but I'm determined to get it done. Here is the replacement bolts that come with the regulator. So I'm going to be tackling this job today. I've been chasing this charge malfunction problem for a while now. At first I thought it had to do with the recall of my car regarding the battery cable, so I brought it into the dealership, but unfortunately the charge malfunction light returned. My second attempt was to change my battery. My battery was close to 8 years, so I thought that was the culprit and that replacing it will fix the problem. Again, the problem returned. So I'm hoping that my third attempt will resolve this problem. The first thing I'm going to do is move my M5 because right now the front is facing the wall of my garage, but I want it to face the door of my garage. That way I have a little bit more space to work on it, and if I need to take a break, I'll still be able to close my garage door. These are the tools that I needed to complete this job. I didn't need the air ratchet, but it definitely made things a little bit easier for me when I was taking out the strut bar. I do have some various extensions here, and then the smaller ratchet and then the bigger ratchet. 10 mil up here, and the bottom is a 13, and then I have another 10 short socket, and then a 8 mil and a 7 mil. This one right here is a star pattern socket. I believe the size is E10, and I use this to remove 2 bolts in the voltage regulator. And then to make things easier for removing the AC line bracket, I have a box wrench ratchet here that's 10 millimeter, and then a 17 millimeter box wrench for removing the positive current that's going on the alternator. Filled up with nuts and bolts is the magnetic tray, which are items that I removed from my car. Now that I got my car up on jack stands, the first thing I'm going to do is remove the bottom panel so I can access the sway bars, and that's the first part that I'm going to remove. I was able to get the front of the car up just enough room so that I could operate underneath it. You can see I took out the panels underneath, and it's right underneath the middle of my car. And then I have my jack stand in the middle, and for additional support I kept the hydraulic jacks on the side. So I have direct access to the sway bar, and once I remove that, I'm also going to be disconnecting AC lines so that I have access to the alternator. My alternator is right there, and what I'm going to do to get some space to operate behind it is I'm going to disconnect my sway bars. So the bracket is here, there's another one here, that way I can bring it down, and then these AC lines also are going to have to get out of the way, so I'm going to loosen those and then probably use a bungee cord to lift it up so that I have easier access in this area. Every time I work on my car, I try to be as neat as possible. That way I don't lose any parts. I'm using my magnetic tray here to keep all my screws and nuts. That way I don't miss any of them. And then I try to keep all my tools in one area. That way they're easily accessible. Getting the sway bar out was not so bad. You could actually see it hanging down right behind me. So now I have direct access to the alternator. Now with the sway bars out of the way and the AC lines, I was able to pull it a little bit closer to me. I have more access to the alternator, which is right there. If I didn't move the sway bar or the AC lines, it'll be right in this area. So it was a good thing I took it out, because this is where the voltage regulator is housed. I'm going to pull out the cover here, which should just pop off with a prying tool. And then the plug is right back there. I'm going to see if I can get it on my own. And then once I get that out, it's held down by, I think, 3 6mm or 7mm screws or nuts. So getting closer. I was able to take out the cover for the voltage regulator, but I have a little problem. It's old and brittle, so it broke, but I was able to get access to the voltage regulator. So next part is to disconnect it up here, which I think is the toughest part of this job. But once I get that disconnected, once I get the cable disconnected, I will be able to remove these 3 screws that's holding it down. Here's the remnants of the voltage regulator cover. These are all the pieces. I tried to fish everything out so it doesn't get stuck any spinning items near the alternator. But I'm just going to look up that part number and probably just order a new one. Because it's going to be a tight fit, I'm going to be using my endoscopic camera, which is right here. I'm going to swivel it through so I can get a better look at the alternator, so I can see which plug to pull. So it is really tight to get the plug disconnected from the voltage regulator, which is going to be right here. So obviously my hands are too big to get in there, so I'm going to employ the help of my wife. I'm going to have her use her left hand to go through this way, and then her right hand to come this way to pull the plug, while the left hand on this side pinches the top of the tab to release the plug. So she'll be pulling it from that way. So what I ended up doing is, instead of unplugging the harness, it was really tight up here and I couldn't feel any tab to pull or push. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking out all the screws on the voltage regulator, and I'm going to remove it and disconnect it when it comes down. This heat shield right here was a real problem. This was what was limiting my space, so I unbolted it right here. I was able to push it, so now I got some wiggle room to operate in this area. So this plug right here was the most difficult part of this project. From the top, when I was trying to reach and disconnect it, it was really tough. So I just decided to remove the voltage regulator and disconnect it from down here. So here is the plug. And this is the This is the voltage regulator that it came out of. It was quite a task to remove the voltage regulator, and it was a really tight fit, but I was able to get the job done, and now it's time to replace it with a new one. Before I install the new voltage regulator, I gotta be careful because on the back side here, these are the brushes, and when you buy them, you notice they're not snapped into place. So I gotta make sure that when I install it back in my car, that I keep the brushes sealed like this. And then the last step is, once I have it mounted up on my car, actually it's gonna be more like this way. Once I have mounted up on my car, I'm going to have to press this in so that the brushes engage. Otherwise, if I install this and I don't activate the brushes, my car won't start. The new voltage regulator came with brand new replacement screws. The ones that came with my car are in still pretty good shape, but I'm just gonna replace everything so it's all brand new. I was able to carefully place the new voltage regulator in place. Right now the screws are just hand tightened. So there's one screw here, one here, and then one back here close to the harness. So I'm just gonna hand tighten it. But the one that I really want to be careful of is this right here. Make sure, let me see if you can see this. This is where the brushes are at right here, my finger's at. I don't want to push that in, so I'm gonna try to stay away from it as much as possible and place that there and then push it in as the last step. I'm back on my little work desk. I'm going to focus on the rectifier cover right now and try to piece it together again, because I went online to shop for a replacement and there's none that are local that sell it. So I'd have to wait about a week or two for it to come in. And right now I don't want to push this project back that far. So I'm just going to piece it together. I'm going to attempt to do some of the pieces tonight, and when it cures tomorrow, I'll do the smaller pieces afterwards. I found a picture online of how this looks. So what I did was I grabbed these clamps to put together some of the major pieces, because that's what I'm gonna work on tonight. And then later on, once this dries, I'm gonna start attaching the smaller pieces. I let the JB Weld cure for maybe 12 hours. So making some progress on putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. Here's some progress on the rectifier cover. I was able to weld that piece together, and then this one here. So it's coming together quite nicely. I was able to piece together a few things too that I noticed were connected. So this piece here matched up, and then this piece actually is 3. So I tried to save some time and put together some pieces that are not gonna go on until some pieces cure. That way I can save some time. I also noticed that this is a Vallejo cover, and you can see some of the letters here. And then this piece here is the EO Vallejo, and it goes right there. Meanwhile, I'm getting my battery charged. I have my charger up here. It's connected to my car. I'm not too sure how much the charge malfunction has been eating away on my battery, so I'm gonna give it a full charge. That way when I start the car up with a healthy battery. Here is the last phase of welding back the pieces for the cover for my voltage regulator. I use JB Weld for this, and getting the right mixture and giving it time to cure really put this back together well. And it's very sturdy. If you ever work with JB Weld, It's a very reliable product. Here are some of the leftover pieces that I'm not going to bother on trying to assemble back to the cover because it's not going to add any strength or rigidity to the cover. So I'm just going to leave it as it is and move on with this. It's going to be a little bit tricky to put the rectifier cover back up on the alternator because I did it in reverse order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the plug, I'm going to put it through this opening here because this is the housing where the plug connects. That way it will align the cover in the right area, and that way I can push it back in without destroying this cover. I just remembered that I gotta push this tab right here in to engage the brushes. I think you can see it right here. I had the cover on, but that's a very important step before I cover the voltage regulator, because if I cover the voltage regulator and I put everything back and I miss the step of activating the brushes, I won't be able to start my car. I was able to snap in the rectifier cover. I had a little trouble putting it on because I forgot how I took it off. So I had to resort back to some of my older videos, and I lined up these wires here, that one, and then it finally snapped into place. So next I'm going to plug in this harness, and then also right up here is the direct current that goes on the alternator. I got everything buttoned up. What gave me the biggest problem was something I didn't anticipate, and that is that bolt right there that secures the heat shield. Had such a tough time getting to it. You can see how beat up my knuckles are just to get to that. But I was able to finally get to it, and now everything's all buttoned up. And I'm just gonna put everything back together and we should be good to go. I'm really glad this project went well. When I looked into replacing the voltage regulator, I noticed that it was going to be a tough job despite it being just a small part. I did come across a few kinks along the way, but I was able to push forward and get the job done. On the last episode, I did the smog for my M5, and now my 911 is due. The 911 is a little bit more tricky because I have a full race exhaust system on there, so I'm gonna have to disassemble everything and put everything back to stock. So it's gonna be a little bit more effort for that. So I'm going to dedicate some time to do that on the next episode, so that way I can get my car legally registered here in California and enjoy the sound and performance again. So that's gonna do it for this episode. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you on the next one. Wow.